The rain in Portland doesn't wash things clean. It just makes the grime slicker. It coats the city in a sheen of gray that reflects the neon signs and the brake lights, blurring the edges of everything until the world looks like a watercolor painting left out in a storm. I was standing under the dripping canvas awning of the downtown farmers market, water pooling around the toes of my boots. I checked my watch for the 5th time in 10 minutes. The crystal was scratched from a close encounter with a junction box last week, but I could still read the time clearly enough. 10:15 a.m. She was 15 minutes late. She's probably just looking for a parking spot, man, my buddy Mike had said when he set this up, a weird, twitchy smirk playing on his lips that I should have questioned. Her name is Cynthia. She works in HR at that big tech firm downtown. She's sophisticated. You'll see, it'll be a total trip. Just wear a collared shirt for once, okay? I adjusted my collar now. It was stiff, starched too heavily by the dry cleaner I rarely used. I felt like a breaker that didn't fit the panel, too big, too rough, taking up too much space in a delicate system. My hands were the real giveaway. I had scrubbed them raw with heavy-duty pumice soap for 20 minutes this morning, trying to scour away the evidence of my trade, but the faint, gray lines of grease and carbon dust in the deep calluses never truly came out. They were tattooed into the skin, a permanent record of every high-voltage transformer I'd serviced in the last decade. I was an industrial electrician. I spent my days in the bowels of shipyards, the ceilings of factories, and the muddy trenches of substations. Standing here, surrounded by stalls selling artisanal goat milk, soap, and organic kale, I felt like a foreign object, a blunt instrument in a room full of glass. I looked around, trying to distract myself from the growing certainty that I was being stood up. The market was a sea of umbrellas and wet canvas. To my left, a woman was wrestling with a heavy commercial crepe maker plugged into a violently vibrating portable generator. She was older than me. Not old, just established. She wore a tailored beige raincoat that looked expensive, the kind of fabric that repels water rather than absorbing it, protected by a heavy canvas apron smeared with flour and batter. Her dark curls were pinned back in a style that had started elegant but was currently losing a war against the humidity. She had a look on her face I recognized instantly. White-knuckled grip on the spatula, tight jaw, shallow, rapid breathing. That was the look of a system running at 110% capacity, vibrating just seconds before the thermal overload trip triggered a shutdown. The sound was small, muffled by the drumming rain and the chatter of the crowd, but distinct to my ears. It was the sound of a connection breaking. The crepe maker died. The cheerful string lights around her booth flickered once and went dark. The hum of the generator turned into an erratic, choking cough, then silence. "No, no, no," she whispered, frantically flipping the toggle switch on the generator. Nothing. She hit the metal casing with the palm of her hand, a gesture of pure desperation. "Please, not today. I cannot afford not today." I should have stayed put. I should have waited for Cynthia. The date Mike had promised would be hilarious. But copper and current don't care about social obligations. Physics doesn't wait for introductions. When a circuit breaks, you fix it. That's the job. That's the instinct that had been drilled into me since I was an apprentice pulling wire in the rain. I stepped out from under the awning. The rain hit my shoulders immediately, heavy and cold, soaking the button-down shirt I felt so awkward in. "It's not the switch," I said, my voice rumbling a little louder than I intended over the sound of the downpour. The woman jumped, looking up at me. Her eyes were the color of polished walnut, wide with stress and sudden fear. She looked exhausted, not just sleepy tired, but the kind of soul tired that settles deep in the marrow when you've been carrying something too heavy for too long. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice sharp. "The generator," I said, pointing a thick finger at the sputtering red box. "Listen to the idle before it died. It was hunting, up and down, right? The governor's spring has likely detached from the throttle arm. It surged and tripped the internal thermal overload, not the toggle switch you're flipping." She stared at me, then at the silent machine, then back at me. "I have a line of 6 people waiting for Nutella crepes. I have 50 pounds of batter that is going to spoil if I don't keep it warm, and I have 0 electricity. Are you with the market maintenance staff?" "No, I'm Jorge. I'm an electrician. I didn't mention I usually worked on 480 Volt transformers for the city grid, not kitchen appliances. But power is power. The rules don't change just because you're making breakfast. I crouched down before she could object. I didn't have my tool belt. I was on a date, theoretically, but I had my Leatherman in my pocket. I always had my Leatherman. It was as essential as my keys or my wallet. I popped the side panel of the generator. The smell of ozone and hot oil hit me as sharp, metallic perfume that made more sense to me than the lavender stall next door. It was the smell of work. "Do you have a hairpin?" I asked, not looking up. I was tracing the linkage with the flashlight app on my phone, ignoring the rain running down my neck. "A what?" "A hairpin. Or a paperclip. The spring is detached. Just like I thought. The hook snapped off. I need something rigid to bridge the gap." She fumbled in her pocket, her hands shaking slightly, and handed me a bobby pin. Her fingers grazed mine. They were freezing. I took the pin, careful not to brush her delicate skin with my rough, scarred hands. With 2 quick, precise twists of the pliers, I bent the bobby pin into a makeshift hook. I reached in, bypassing the broken linkage, snagged the loose spring, and reseated it on the throttle arm. It wasn't a permanent fix, but it was a solid patch. It would hold tension. I pressed the reset button on the internal breaker. I pulled the starter cord. The generator roared to life, settling into a steady, rhythmic hum. The lights flickered back on. The crepe maker beeped its readiness. I stood up, wiping my hands on my jeans, ruining the clean denim. "Don't run the lights and the mixer at the same time," I advised, stepping back to give her space. "The load is too high for this unit. You're pulling too many amps. Cycle them. Crepes first, mix later." Miriam, her name was embroidered in elegant. Looping script on her apron, looked at the generator, then up at me. Her expression shifted from panic to something softer, something like shock mixed with a dawn of gratitude. "You fixed it," she said, sounding amazed. "With a hair accessory." "It's about tension," I said, shrugging. "Doesn't matter what holds it, as long as it holds." "You saved me," she said. "Literally. I would have lost the whole day. That revenue covers my ingredient costs for the week." She reached for a paper cup. "Coffee? It's the least I can do. It's good coffee, not the market swill. I brew it myself." "I'm waiting for someone," I said, checking my watch again. 10:45. The sinking feeling in my gut was heavy now. Cynthia, blind date, set up by a friend. Miriam's face went still. She lowered the cup slowly. The warmth drained out of her expression, replaced by a flash of anger that surprised me. It wasn't directed at me, but for me. "Cynthia? Blonde? Works in HR at the tech firm downtown?" "Yeah." "You know her?" Miriam let out a short, sharp sigh. She looked at her phone on the counter, then back at me. "Jorge, Cynthia isn't coming. She's my cousin." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "Oh, did she text you she's running late?" "No," Miriam said, her voice hard. "She texted me 10 minutes ago laughing about how she was pranking some guy her boyfriend knows because he bet she wouldn't go out with a grease monkey. She's at brunch across town. She thinks this is funny." The words hung in the wet air. Grease monkey. I felt the heat rise in my neck, burning the tips of my ears. It wasn't shame I made 6 figures keeping this city's lights on, and I owned my own home free and clear. But it was a sharp, stinging humiliation. My friends, Mike, they thought it was funny to put me out of my element. They thought my work, my hands, my life was a punchline. They wanted to see the big electrician stand in the rain waiting for a girl who was too good for him. "Right," I said, my voice flat. I took a step back, into the rain. "Okay, thanks for telling me." I turned to go. I needed to be somewhere else. Anywhere else. I needed to go weld something just to feel the heat. I needed to be back in my domain, where things made sense. "Wait." Miriam stepped out of the booth. The rain soaked her expensive coat instantly, spotting the silk. She reached out and grabbed my sleeve. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "She's an idiot," Miriam said fiercely. "She's shallow and she's cruel. And I have a blueberry scone with your name on it. Please, stay." I looked at her. She wasn't looking at me like a charity case. She wasn't looking at me like a grease monkey. She was looking at me like I was the only solid thing in a spinning world. Like I had value. "I don't eat scones," I said. "Usually. Too dry." "I make the best scones in Portland," she countered, a spark of pride entering her voice. That's a fact, not an opinion. They are tender, and they have lemon zest. Give me 5 minutes. Let me thank you properly. Please. I don't want you to leave thinking everyone in my family is garbage. I hesitated. The generator hummed steadily behind her, a machine I had fixed, a connection I had made. The rain was cold, but the space under her awning looked warm. Okay, I said. One scone. Her bakery, the sweetest thing, was 3 blocks away in the Pearl District. I ended up there 2 days later, on a Tuesday afternoon. Not for a date, but because she called me. It's the inspector, she had said, her voice tight with suppressed panic over the phone. He's here now. He's threatening to red tag the whole building. Jorge, I don't know who else to call. You're the only electrician I know who actually looks. I left the job site at the docks immediately. I didn't even change. I parked my truck in the alley behind her shop. This wasn't the farmer's market. This was a brick-and-mortar operation in an old industrial building that had been retrofitted about as well as a bumper held on by duct tape. It was charming, sure, but charm doesn't carry current. When I walked in, the air smelled of yeast, vanilla, and caramelized sugar. But underneath that, to my trained nose, I smelled the sharp, acrid tang of melting plastic, the smell of danger. A man in a city vest, Inspector Vance, was standing by the main counter, holding a clipboard like a weapon. Mariam stood opposite him, her arms crossed, looking smaller than she had at the market. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. I'm telling you, Vance was saying, tapping the clipboard with a pen. The panel is warm to the touch. That's an immediate hazard. Code 110.14. I have to pull the meter. You're shut down until a licensed electrician signs off on a full rewire. You can't operate like this. If you pull the meter, I lose $4,000 of inventory in the walk-in freezer, Mariam said. Her voice didn't shake, but her hands did, clenched into fists at her sides. I have 3 wedding cakes due this weekend. You kill the power. You kill my business. Not my problem, ma'am. Safety is my problem. And this place is a tinderbox. I'm an electrician, I announced, stepping into the light. I wore my work boots and Carhartts this time, covered in dust from the shipyard. I carried my bag 50 pounds of tools that felt like an extension of my arm. Let me see the panel. Vance turned, looking me up and down with a sneer. And you are? Jorge Nelson, Local 48, Industrial Division. I dropped my license on the counter. It landed with a heavy, authoritative slap. I specialize in high voltage and commercial distribution. If the panel is warm, it's likely a loose neutral or an overloaded bus bar. I can verify it in 5 minutes. Vance picked up the license. He checked the hologram. He couldn't argue with the credentials. Local 48 didn't mess around, and my certification level was higher than his. You have 20 minutes, Vance said, checking his watch. If I see a hazard, the power goes. I'm not risking my pension on a bakery. I walked past them, straight to the back room. Mariam followed me. Thank you, she whispered. He's been yelling at me for an hour. Don't thank me yet. Let's see what we're dealing with. I opened the gray breaker panel. It was a nightmare. A bird's nest of tangled wires, double-tapped breakers, and zero labeling. Someone had tried to run a commercial bakery on a residential service load. It was chaotic. It was dangerous. It offended me on a cellular level. I pulled out my Fluke multimeter. I clamped it onto the main feeders. 38 amps on phase A, 42 on phase B, I muttered, reading the digital display. You're balanced, but you're pushing the limit. I utilized my thermal camera, a FLIR attachment on my phone. The heat wasn't coming from the breakers. It was glowing red from a junction box mounted above the panel. There, I pointed to the screen. Bad splice. High resistance creates heat. It's bottling up. The wire nut is failing. I opened the junction box. The wire nut was melted, a glob of black plastic fusing the copper together. Can you fix it? Mariam asked. She was standing close enough that I could smell the vanilla again. I can replace the splice now. That satisfies the immediate threat. I'll retorque the lugs. Vance will have to let you stay open. I turned to her, and I had to give her the hard truth. That was part of the job. But Mariam, this whole service needs an upgrade. You're running ovens, mixers, freezers. You need a 400 amp service. This is 200. It's like trying to push a river through a garden hose. Eventually, the hose bursts. How much? 10 grand, maybe 12. Materials are expensive right now. Copper is up. She closed her eyes. She leaned against the wall, and for a second, the high-powered business owner vanished. She just looked like a mom who was tired of fighting. I don't have it, she said quietly. I put everything into the renovation for the wedding expo next month. If I can't host that event, I'm done. I'm bankrupt. I have my son's tuition. I can't touch that. I looked at the melted wire. I looked at the clean, organized kitchen she had built. I looked at her. My friends thought I was a joke, a blunt instrument. But I knew things they didn't. I knew that structure was everything. I knew that if the foundation was good, you could fix anything else. Mariam was a good foundation. She was solid. She just had bad wiring. I can do the labor, I said. My voice sounded loud in the small room. Nights, weekends. You pay for materials. That cuts the cost in half. I pulled the permit as a homeowner assist if you live upstairs. I do live upstairs, she said, opening her eyes. But why? You don't owe me anything. My family treated you like garbage. I like fixing things, I said. And I don't like seeing good work get shut down by bad wiring. It offends me. It was the truth. Mostly. The other part of the truth was that I liked the way she looked at me, not as a grease monkey, but as the guy with the answers. As a solution. Okay, she said, but I feed you. And I pay you when the expo money comes in. With interest. Deal. Now go get Vans. We settled into a routine that felt dangerously domestic. For the next 3 weeks, I would finish my shift at the shipyard at 4 p.m., drive to the bakery, and work until midnight. The work was real. It wasn't a montage. It was cutting, threading, and pulling wire until my shoulders burned. I was bending pipe in the basement on a Tuesday night. Rigid conduit. You have to measure, mark, and use a hand bender to get the angles perfect. It's physical work. You have to use your body weight to leverage the steel. I measured the offset 6 inches. I marked the pipe. I placed it in the bender, put my boot on the heel, and pulled. The metal groaned and yielded. Perfect 90-degree turn. Mariam came down the stairs carrying a plate. Empanadas, she said. Spinach and cheese, fresh out of the oven. I'm dirty, I said, holding up my hands. They were covered in cutting oil and metal shavings. I can't touch food. I'll hold it. She stepped over a coil of wire. She picked up an empanada and held it to my mouth. I hesitated. It was intimate. Feeding someone is vulnerable. It requires trust. I opened my mouth. I took a bite. It was hot, flaky, and salty. Perfect. Good? She asked. Yeah. I chewed, swallowing hard. You're good at this. The dough is structured. She laughed. That's the engineer in you talking. It's flaky, Jorge. Structure creates the flake, I argued gently. Layers of butter and flour. It's engineering, thermal expansion. She watched me tighten a coupling on the pipe. You make that look easy. Bending metal. It's about leverage. Physics. If you fight the metal, you lose. You have to guide it. I looked at her. She was wearing a silk blouse that probably cost more than my boots, but she was sitting on a rough crate of conduit couplings in a dusty basement, just to be near me. You need to sit down, I said. You've been on your feet for 12 hours. I have invoices to file. The invoices will be there tomorrow. Your ankles won't. I pointed to the crate. Sit. Talk to me. Tell me why you bought this money pit. She sat. She sighed, a long exhale that seemed to deflate her posture. I wanted something mine. My ex. He was a lawyer. Big. Important. He loved that I baked cookies for his parties, but he hated that I wanted to sell them. He made me feel like a garnish. Decorative. Nice to have, but not necessary. I tightened the lock nut on the box. Click. It held fast. You're not a garnish, I said to the wall. You're the load-bearing wall. This whole place stands because of you. I felt her looking at me. The silence stretched, warm and heavy. Jorge? Yeah? Turn around. I turned. She was looking at me with an expression that made my chest tight. It wasn't gratitude. It was recognition. You're not just an electrician, are you? She said softly. Just a guy with tools. No. You're an artist. You care about wires no one will ever see. You labeled every single breaker in handwriting neater than mine. You swept the floor before you left last night. If I do it right, no one notices, I said. That's the point. If people notice the electricity, I failed. I notice, she whispered. I looked at the exit sign above her head. I counted the rivets on the conduit strap. I wanted to kiss her. I wanted to cross the 3 feet between us and wrap my oil-stained hands around her waist. But I respected the boundary. I respected the job. And I respected her too much to be another complication in her life right now. I need to finish this run, I said, my voice rough. She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Okay, I'll get you more coffee. The crisis hit 2 weeks later. I was replacing the main sub-panel in the kitchen. I had killed the power, so we were working by the light of my battery-powered floodlights. It created a stark, high-contrast world of shadows and steel. The back door slammed open. A teenager walked in. Leo, her son. He was 16, lanky, holding a basketball and wearing headphones. Mom? The Wi-Fi is out. Jorge is working on the panel, mijo. No power for an hour. Leo looked at me. He looked at the tools spread out on the pristine stainless steel prep table. He looked at my dirty boots. Is this the guy? Leo asked, his voice dripping with teenage disdain. Leo, Miriam warned, her tone sharp. The guy Aunt Cynthia talked about? The charity case? She said you were dating the help. My hand slipped on the screwdriver. I gouged the drywall. A puff of white dust floated into the air. Leo, Miriam shouted. That is enough. I stood up slowly. I put the screwdriver down. I wiped my hands on a rag. I looked at the kid. I didn't yell. I didn't get angry. I just got quiet. I'm not a charity case, I said, my voice low and rumbling like a distant transformer. And I'm not the help. I'm the guy keeping your house from burning down while you sleep. I'm the guy making sure your Wi-Fi turns back on so you can ignore the world. Show some respect for the work. Leo blinked, taken aback by the weight of my voice. Whatever. He stormed out. Miriam turned to me, horrified. Jorge, I didn't. Cynthia talks too much. I never said that. I would never say that. But they think it, I said. I scrubbed my hands in the sink until the skin burned, but the grease lines stayed. The humiliation from the farmer's market came rushing back. The class divide, the lawyer ex-husband, the silk blouse versus the Carhartts. Your family, my friends, they think this is a joke, the electrician and the business owner. I don't care what they think. I care about us. Is there an us? I asked. Or am I just the cheapest quote you could find? It was a cruel question. I regretted it the moment it left my mouth. Miriam flinched. That isn't fair. You know that isn't fair. I can't work tonight, I said. I stared at the panel instead of at her, counting screws so I wouldn't say something reckless. I started packing my tools. Click, snap, zip. The sounds were loud in the quiet kitchen. I need air. I walked out. I got in my truck and drove until the city lights faded. I stayed away for 2 days. It rained. Of course it rained. I sat in my apartment, staring at the TV, but all I could see was the unfinished conduit run in her basement. It was sloppy to leave it like that. Unprofessional. A loose end. I checked my phone. No texts from Miriam. She was giving me space. Or maybe she realized Leo was right. Then, my phone buzzed. A text. Inspector Vance is back. He says the emergency permit expired. He's shutting off the power at noon tomorrow if the final inspection isn't done. I don't know what to do. I looked at the time. It was 10 p.m. I looked at my hands. They were clean. I hated them clean. They felt useless. I remembered the way she looked at the generator. Panic, fear, the way she had held the empanada for me, the way she defended me to her son. I grabbed my keys. You don't walk off a job until the lights are green. I arrived at the bakery at 6 a.m. on the day of the deadline. Mariam opened the back door. She looked terrible. Puffy eyes, no makeup, wearing a baggy sweatshirt. Jorge, get out of the way, I said gently, pushing past her with my tool bag. I have 6 hours to terminate 300 connections and label the panel. Coffee, black, keep it coming. You came back. I finished the job. That's the rule. I worked like a demon. I stripped wire with a rhythm that was almost musical. Strip, twist, cap. Strip, twist, cap. I torqued the lugs to the exact manufacturer specification. I balanced the load between phase A and phase B so the system would run cool and efficient. It was a symphony of efficiency. I didn't stop for water. I just worked. Mariam stood by the door, watching me. She didn't offer to help this time. She just witnessed. She saw the sweat soaking my shirt. She saw the precision. At 11:55 a.m., Inspector Vance walked in. He looked happy. He had a red tag in his hand, ready to slap it on the meter. "Time's up, Miss Rogers," he chirped. "Shut it down." I stepped out from the utility closet. I was covered in sweat, dust, and grime. I looked like a monster from the deep. "Don't touch that meter," I growled. Vance jumped. "You again." "The work is done," I said. "The panel is upgraded. The circuits are dedicated. The ground fault protection is installed. The arc fault breakers are seated. I haven't inspected it. Inspect it now." I handed him my torque screwdriver. "Check the lugs. If you find one loose connection, just one, you can shut us down. But if you don't, you sign the occupancy permit. Permanent." Vance glared at me. He took the screwdriver. He spent 45 minutes poking, prodding, and testing. He checked the voltage drop. He checked the grounding bond. He tried to find a fault. He wanted to find a fault. He checked every connection twice. He didn't find a single fault. He slapped the sticker on the panel. "Pass," he muttered, "but I'm watching you." He left. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. The room tilted, and I braced my hand against the stainless steel counter to steady myself. My adrenaline crashed. Mariam walked over to me. She stopped a foot away. "You finished the job," she said. "Yeah. You're legal. You're safe." Is that all this was? A job? I looked at her. No. It was a rescue. I don't need rescuing, Jorge. I know, I said. That's why I like you. You don't need me to pay your bills. You don't need me to be a lawyer. You just need the lights to work. I need you, she corrected. She stepped into my space. She put her hands on my chest, right over the grease stains on my shirt. She didn't care about the dirt. My cousin sees a grease monkey, she said fiercely. Leo sees the help. But I see the man who fixed my generator in the rain. I see the man who built this. She gestured to the room. You built the heart of this place. I'm just an electrician, Mariam. And I'm just a baker. We make things. We work with our hands. We're the same. She kissed me. It wasn't a movie kiss. It tasted like sugar and coffee. It grounded me. It closed the circuit. You stayed, she whispered against my mouth. When everyone else walked away, I'm not going anywhere, I said. The wiring is guaranteed for life. The wedding expo was a week later. The bakery was packed. The lights, my lights were perfect. Warm, steady, inviting. No flickering, no buzzing, just pure, clean power. I was in the back, checking the load on the new panel just to be sure. I was wearing a suit. I hated suits, but Mariam asked. Ladies and gentlemen, Mariam's voice rang out over the sound system. I peeked through the swinging door. She was standing on a crate, my conduit crate, addressing the crowd. I want to thank everyone for coming, she said. This renovation was a nightmare. We almost didn't make it. We faced a lot of dark days. She looked toward the kitchen door. She saw me. But I had a partner, she said. Her voice was loud, clear. A partner who taught me that if the foundation is strong, you can weather any storm. Jorge? She waved me out. My instinct was to hide, to stay in the shadows where it was safe, but she was waiting. I walked out. The crowd turned. I saw my friends Mike and the guys standing by the cheese table, their jaws dropped. I saw Leo, looking sheepish but nodding respectfully at me. Mariam held out her hand. This is Jorge Nelson, she said to the room. He's the reason the lights are on, and he's the reason I'm smiling. She took my hand. Her grip was firm. She didn't try to hide my calluses, she squeezed them. My boyfriend, she added. The room applauded. Mike choked on a cracker. I looked at Mariam. You told them. I stated a fact, she said, leaning into me. You fixed the lights, Jorge? I looked at the panel on the wall. Green light, system nominal. Interesting, I said, smiling for the first time all day. I usually charge double for that. I'll put it on your tab. She pulled me close. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a key, the spare key to the back door she had given me for the work. I held it up. Keep it, she whispered. You're on the permanent staff. I put the key back in my pocket, right next to my Leatherman. And for once, I didn't worry about the voltage. I just let it flow.